Yes.
We have to be proactive and be the voice of freedom, of human rights, of democracy for the Iranian people.
Can I ask you to reflect on when we hear news like this, the arrest of filmmakers? I don't know if we had you on the line yet, but I talked at the beginning of our show about just how normalized this has all become. We hear about someone like Jafar Panahi. By the way, I'm such a fan, and I've had the great fortune to interview him. We hear about Jafar Panahi being arrested, and there's this kind of sense in the Iranian community of shaking our heads, but we don't really react with the kind of shock that at this point that we might have if, I don't know, if Martin Scorsese was arrested by the CIA for having an opinion. You know, how do we fight the feeling of acceptance or complacency when such events happen with such tragic regularity in Iran?
It is a problem, and in fact, the Iranian regime has normalized corruption and violence to such an extent that if you look at videos of the streets of Tehran, people are agitated, and there is an extreme level of indignant behavior by the regime organizations, and I think it is a major problem that we have to look into. On the one hand, we also have to understand that the people in Iran are suffering economically as well as their basic human rights in terms of basic freedoms that they enjoy, and they're overwhelmed. Every day something happens.
Right.
And the minority within the country who can afford to, or who have the resolve and the motivation and passion to not remain silent, as well as a lot of us who are outside of the country and have the means as well as the passion to speak out, we must do so. And part of it also has to do with how we engage with the international community, from institutions and organizations all the way up to the United Nations, to members of parliament in our localities, to talk with them, convey to them how serious this matter is, and help neutralize this normalization of violence and corruption. Because I feel like foreign governments, the international community, are narrowing down, and I wrote another piece recently about a strategy that the Western countries boast, being decoupling of issues, which I traced it back. I found a bug in the software, in the operating system of Western democracies, that I traced back to the Nixon era and his foreign policy doctrine to decouple issues in negotiations with authoritarian regimes. Let's talk about this one specific topic, be it nuclear or an oil deal or something, and forget about everything else. And I think that is a travesty. It is a fallacy that has devastated the Iranian people, the people of Syria, people of Iraq, Afghanistan, and I think the example of Russia blowing up in our face by attacking Ukraine is something that is a rude awakening to Western powers. And going back to what you said, I find it our duty to engage as people. Over the last 43 years, a few million Iranians live abroad, and a good chunk of them have become citizens of these countries. And we have to be proactive and be the voice of freedom, of human rights, of democracy for the Iranian people, and divorce ourselves, especially in the arts community, from ideological and partisan contamination of the discourse.